to Lemon Live. We're back at 5 o'clock. Yesterday we had a very special show. I can actually hear, you can hear me today, so I'm excited about that. And we have a very interesting, I think a great show and a great group of people to talk about it with. And people who know this particular thing that we're talking about, this whole idea of how people identify and race. Some of the people you see on the screen were with me throughout this as we went through this back with Barack Obama back in 2008, 2009, and even 2011 and 12 with the whole birth certificate thing and is he black enough and so on and so forth. As you know, the current vice president and now Democratic presidential candidate, Kamala Harris, has been, the former president went to NABJ yesterday, National Association of Black Journalists Convention, spoke, and then pretended not to know that the vice president is black, right? Saying, I thought she was Indian. So anyway, I think it's a targeted attack. I'm joined now by Tara Setmayer. She's a co-founder and CEO of the Seneca Project, an MSNBC contributor, and a dear friend of mine and a friend of the show. Same thing with Charles Blow, New York Times columnist and MSNBC political analyst, a dear friend of mine, old friend and friend of the show. And then Sanjyot Dunung, right? Did I say that, Sanjyot?
Sanjyot Dunung, yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Is an author and entrepreneur and the founder and CEO of Atma Global and a new friend. And I hope that we can have her on the show many, many times in the future. So thank you all for joining us. I just want to tell, how are you guys doing? How are you feeling after yesterday? How are you feeling, Miss Tara Setmayer?
Well, I mean, I've been pretty energized for a while now, despite all of the political ups and downs that have been going on, because the assault on women's rights doesn't matter who's at the top of whose ticket. It's still happening. So we have been focused and in galvanizing women. And now that Kamala Harris is at the top of the ticket and watching MAGA implode and Donald Trump just become completely undone, choosing his MAGA misogynist J.D. Vance, and then going off on that rant yesterday and all of the crazy that's happening on social. It's just really reinvigorating to go and join this fight, because I got to tell you, Don, and you and I have been friends for years. I've been coming on your shows for years. I'm biracial. And, the having to explain identity and who's black enough or not. I mean, I got all kinds of the worst insults from both sides, because when I was back as a Republican, black folks were real mad at me. And then when I decided to, become a never Trumper and stand up against Trump, the racial insults from the right have been worse than anything I'd ever seen. And so I took particular offense to Donald Trump's behavior yesterday. And him now tripling down on this whole thing about Kamala Harris's racial identity and trying to call her a phony or a fraud, or just like MAGA doesn't get to define us. They don't. And they don't get to make us feel lesser than, because we're not.
And that's why I hate talking about it, because I think it was strategic. I think it was strategic. He couldn't stand the attention not being on him. And I think we're kind of falling for it. I'm actually disappointed. Look, I'm of two minds about NABJ. I think that as reporters, yeah, that's a whole different discussion. I think as reporters, we have an obligation to cover him, because he is a former president and he's running, to do interviews with him and so on, but not to necessarily be granted a platform like that. I just don't think that anyone is entitled to a platform like that unless you earn it and deserve it. And also, it's a private organization. They don't have to invite him. So I was a little bit surprised that they did it. Just in case, before we go on, you're living under a rock and you missed it yesterday doing a question and answer session at the National Black Journalists Association conference in Chicago. The former president insulted the panel of moderators, claimed illegal immigrants are taking, quote, black jobs, declined to say if J.D. Vance was prepared to take office in the event of tragic circumstances, falsely claimed that Kamala Harris had failed her bar exam, and most infamously accused the vice president of only truly being Indian before, quote, turning black. So before we get started, I just want to play some of it, and then I want you guys to do your thing. Here it is.
And then we'll move on to other questions here. Some of your own supporters, including Republicans on Capitol Hill, have labeled Vice President Kamala Harris, who is the first Black and Asian American woman to serve as vice president and be on a major party ticket, as a DEI hire. Is that acceptable language to you? And will you tell those Republicans and those supporters to stop it?
How do you define DEI? Go ahead.
How do you define
Diversity, equity, inclusion.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. Is that what your definition?
That is
Give me a
literally
definition
the words
then. Would you give me a definition
DEI.
of that? Give me a definition.
Sir,
of
I'm
that.
asking you a question,
No,
a
you
very
have to
direct
define
question.
it. Define it for me, if you
I
would.
just defined it, sir. Do you believe that Vice President Kamala Harris is only on the ticket because she is a black woman?
Well, I can say no. I think it's maybe a little bit different. So, I've known her a long time indirectly, not directly, very much, and she was always of Indian heritage, and she was only promoting Indian heritage. I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. So I don't know, is she Indian or is she black?
She is always
But you know
identified
what?
as a black woman.
I
She went to a
respect
historically
either
black
one.
college.
I respect either one, but she
Okay,
obviously
I think
doesn't.
we've heard enough. So you guys get the gist of how that went. So Tara, I've heard from you, and I'll get a little bit more, but I want to get everyone around. Charles?
Yeah, of course.
Well, I guess I'm kind of surprised by the campaign at writ large. I assumed that when Joe Biden dropped out, that there would be a chaos to choose a new candidate, that it would be a struggle, that the Trump and Republicans would be able to run a very effective smear campaign or whatever kind of campaign you want to call it, but really come at them in a very effective way. None of that has been true so far.
Yeah.
The Democrats have rallied very quickly around Kamala Harris. The Harris campaign has been almost flawless up until this point. Anything can change. You always have to say at the moment. Up until this moment, almost flawless. Every bit of it, keeping Joe Biden off the campaign trail for her. So all of the negative that people associated with the Biden administration attaches to him, not to her. She rebrands as a new person, not doing television interviews, just being in front of big, adoring crowds. All of it's just flawless. Mm-hmm. The Trump campaign on the other side has been feeble and weak, and just it's really hard to understand how much of a wreck it is, including this interview, because what you assume that he's trying to do, and no one in his campaign told him not to do, was to Elizabeth Warren, Kamala Harris, was to say that she was a person who had made a convenient choice to be a minority so that she could take advantage of it. He thought it would play in the same way that it played, the Pocahontas thing played against Elizabeth Warren. Completely different dynamics. Mm-hmm. Maybe there was an audience somewhere that says that this is a white woman who has privileges that other people didn't have, and by claiming that she was a part of her ancestry was Native American, that she had gotten it up. That's not how the Kamala thing works. Where's the advantage here? So there's no way there would have been an advantage. The other thing was, the polls kept showing us, the polls that kind of drilled down on Black people, particularly Black men, was showing that he was going to get a tremendous number of Black votes. We don't know if those polls were true or not, but they kept showing the same thing, so it's hard to discount them. He's completely shooting himself in the foot with this. Even if there were Black people, particularly Black men, who were open to support him, they don't want to see you beating up on a Black woman. So I don't understand how this was supposed to work to his advantage. No part of it makes any sense to me.
Unless Charles, the idea was to go and stick it to those women, and we're going to show them that they, even if they're hostile to me, I'm going to show them. Because there is an element of that with MAGA that enjoys Donald Trump's hostility toward women and women of color.
Yeah, and I know to Charles and Tara,
doesn't help them add votes.
To both of you, I know Twitter is not the world, but on Twitter, the people who said that they were Black and men, they were saying they actually were eating it up. But I don't. You
can't believe that.
I don't know what's on Twitter anymore. I don't know who's a bot, who's not. I saw one of those comment centers, and it was like a zillion screens, and one person was responding to a lot of people. I don't know what's happening on Twitter.
Or white guys faking themselves, to be Black people on Twitter. You can't believe that part.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wouldn't look at Twitter, but I would probably also add that I would say that you're right, Charles. It probably wasn't strategic, and it was a dumb move in terms of the way it came out. But I do think that Trump is devious enough to think that he can pit one minority versus another. And if you notice, what he's really trying to say is culturally, can you be two cultures at the same time? You know, can you be Asian and Black at the same time? And the answer is, of course. In America, 15% of Americans are multiracial. It's almost as if he does. Yeah, exactly, Tara. It's almost as if he doesn't know his own stats. He doesn't even know his own VP's family, by the way, right? JD Vance's children are multiracial, and we should be celebrating that, right? We celebrate that in America. And I agree with you, Don, that we don't want to give this too much oxygen because that's what he needs. He has nothing left.
He wants the attention.
Exactly.
I'm sure
the vice president.
His advisors, if they had anything to do with it, if they could get to him, I think, Charles, to what you said, just sort of jumping off of what you said, I think that the Harris campaign had played it perfectly, almost perfectly, as you said. And, after he got shot, he ate up the headlines. And everyone's like, oh, my God, he's elected. He's going to get the sympathy vote. He's a hero, whatever. And then that completely went away. And he lost the headlines. Kamala Harris in the headlines, Vice President Harris in the headlines every single day since then. I think he just kind of lost his mind. But, speaking
of the
of
RNC didn't give him any help really either because of how insane that whole thing ended up becoming. And then him going off the rails with his speech, all the media trying to gaslight America into believing that Donald Trump had turned a corner and all of a sudden he turned into a good person and he had changed. No, he didn't. And we all knew that. They tried to push it for 4 days during the RNC. And then he showed us again who he is in that insane speech at the end when he accepted the nomination. So that's why he didn't get a bump. And did he actually get shot? We still don't know. I mean, the assassination attempt is bad enough, but we still don't know. There's been no official report about what happened to the ear.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, look, last night, I didn't see, my producers gave me a soundbite of Omarosa talking about Donald Trump claiming, I think, that he was Swedish or something. I remember that story where he pretended to be something because he thought his heritage was actually embarrassing, or he pretended to be German. I forget exactly.
Isn't his real name Drumpf?
Yeah.
Didn't he change his name? So he needs to stop.
When did he become white, or when did he become German, or whatever it is? So here is a Swedish,
and his mother is an immigrant, right? So his mother was born in Scotland. So, we have to recognize that immigrants come in every different form, and he needs to know that immigrants are in his family too.
But I don't think it's as deep as some of you guys do. I really do believe that he was trying to get Black people in that order. I think he sees the audience in front of him. I think it goes out to everyone, but he sees who's in front of him. He tries to play the audience he has in front of him. And he was trying to get them to take a different view of her as an imposter, a racial dolezal of Blackness. And there was no way that was going to work, but somehow he didn't register that was not going to work in that. And that's why I say the campaign against her is scrambling to try to figure out a branding mechanism that works. And every time they try, it falls flat. It just doesn't stick. And that's why I'm so shocked, because I feel like he has actually been rather successful in branding people for at least the last 8 years that he's been in presidential politics. And now all of a sudden, to have him floundering in his attempts to brand her is just extraordinary.
He's going to try and brand her now as maybe a phony. I don't know. He was like going into his greatest hits of like recycled insults. He called her lying or crazy and all these other. And we're like, okay, like snooze. We heard this already, because he was so caught off guard. And to Charles's point, Susie Wiles and Chris LaCivita, who are running Trump's campaign, are seasoned Republican operatives. They know better. And it's clear that they've lost control of their candidate. If they had some control for a little while there was some campaign discipline, and I say that very loosely. But now Trump is completely undone with the fact that Kamala is his opponent and it's not Biden anymore, and he doesn't know what to do with himself. And they've lost control of the candidate, because there's no way that those advisors advised him to do this. He's listening to other people that are probably his worst type of people to be listening to in this moment. Obviously.
Well, Charles and Sanjyot, listen, I want you to show you this, because this is something that he put up on, in this sort of his quadrupling down on his Harris isn't black line of attack. This was on his social media company, a page, whatever it is, a photo this morning of the vice president wearing traditional Indian clothing with her maternal side of her family. Now, I'm not sure what this actually does, because
he thinks he's
don't really
proving
get
his
it.
point. He posted
I
also
see
the
her
Mindy
with her
Kaling
black
thing.
daddy too, but go on. Sorry.
Yeah, no, he also posted the Mindy Kaling video where she talks about cooking Indian food. And so it's like, yeah, that's one half of her family. Just
Tara.
like my half of the family is German and Italian.
Tara,
Like,
Charles,
stop.
do you remember back in 2014, 15, something, where CNN did all the anchors and we traced our roots, right? And I got in touch with the white side of my family in my hometown of Louisiana. But I'm not white, but I do have white relatives. And so, I mean, but what is that? I don't understand what that picture means. Is that insulting to you, Sanjyot, to see something like that?
No, and I don't think it's insulting to most Americans. To truth be told, most people are not only multiracial, but think about the fact that Ancestry.com is one of the hottest websites. Everybody wants to know what their bloodline is, right? Everybody wants to check out their ancestry.
Except me. I don't want to know.
But you don't.
I don't want to know. Keep it. I don't want anybody. I don't want any private companies with my DNA. I'm sorry.
You have not done any of that. You don't know your roots.
I don't care. I come from Louisiana.
And that's fine too. But many
that's all I
people
need to
do,
know.
right?
You're from where? Louisiana?
Yeah, and that's all I need to know.
If you're from Louisiana, you're from everywhere. You know, and I know.
You are.
I'm from everywhere. I was shocked by looking at my ancestry, and I've had it, and then Henry Louis Gates had to do it, and he had to make me cry. It was crazy.
Everyone, I want him to do mine too, because mine's like, you know, my family comes from Germany and Italy, and on my father's side, he's actually from Guatemala. Oh. So there's like, you know, I have I'm all mixed up, but that's okay. Like, that's fine. And if we were to apply Donald Trump's test to me, then I guess the pictures of me getting married in Sicily and being with my Italian roots and that, you know, part of me makes me somehow
no longer a woman of color. Do you identify as biracial or black? Tara, you're a woman of color. I know that.
Yeah, I said I'm a woman of color. Like, I'll say, like, I used to struggle with this because I'm not really African American. Because, like I said, my family doesn't come from, like, I don't have the American heritage of, you know, coming from the South or whatever. My biological father is actually from Guatemala. So they came in the 50s, escaping the revolution down there in the 50s. So that's why. So, I mean, am I black? Yeah, I guess I'm a woman of color, right? One drop rule in America. Mm-hmm. So to America, I'm black.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But the picture you put up, though, Don, I just want to say this about that picture. Put the insult aside just for a moment. We all can understand that it is insulting. To whom does that? Who does that work for?
Right. Well, that's my question. Yes.
What voting block does that attract? If you're looking for the racist vote, there, no matter if she's Southeast Asian or black, they still are racist. So it doesn't matter. So they don't get any more of them. Is it supposed to upset the black people? Because they've always accepted her as a black woman because she's always identified herself that way. Is it supposed to upset the Asian vote so that they would? I just can't quite understand the political calculation here in this line and continuing. I understand his compulsion, which is he never says he's wrong. So no matter what he does, if somebody says he's wrong, he tries to double down on the thing they say he's wrong about. I get his psychosis. I get it. I don't understand the political strategy and to what political demographic this approach appeals that would get him another vote.
Yeah. Well, Sanjyot, I think it's fantastic. And I think most people think it's fantastic for someone, you know, who is of Indian descent, right? Asian descent. She is a Jamaican. Like, I don't understand it. And aren't people who are part of those demographics, doesn't that ignite and excite them? And I don't know. And wouldn't that sort of picture, putting that up there and having this kind of talk, wouldn't that turn them off?
It would turn them off. So I agree with you, Charles. I don't think there's a strategy. I don't think there's a demographic other than appealing to the very core base. And I'll answer this in two parts. actually to most Asians and South Asians, a picture like that celebrates everything that they love, right? They love the sense of family, and all Americans do, right? We very much have a sense of shared values, and I think that's an important thing that we're seeing with most voters, and we're seeing with a lot of people, is people vote their values. They don't vote their ethnicity or their skin color. And I think for most voters, this falls flat. This is really just showing another side to Vice President Harris, and one that they find warm and endearing, if anything. And her stories and the sayings that she learned from both her mother and her father reflect the multiple heritage and the cultures and the influences that those have had on her life. So I think that it is a veiled attempt by Trump, just as he did with President Obama, to sort of see if you can delegitimize somebody, whether it's a birth certificate, whether it's to crack stones and throw stones at their heritage or their culture, or to minimize, the things that they say. The whole thing about the coconut pilling, it's if you go to South India, there's coconut trees everywhere, and it's a very common saying. So it really is more endearing than anything else. And I think that the Vice President's campaign has done a wonderful job in transforming some of this media and these communications and making them positives. Some of the things that people don't know about Indian heritage that that he's questioning, because I think part of yesterday was also about her law degree and things like that, which is really very myopic of him, because she's been an outstanding lawyer, is that she comes from a heritage, both families, right? Both her father and her mother. Education is cherished. It's a long lineage of families, grandparents who have done very well in service, in education. Just the sheer idea that her mother came to this country in the early 60s. Think for a moment. If you know anything about South Asia, you will understand just how open-minded and progressive her parents must have been, Vice President Harris's grandparents, to send their daughter to a school halfway around the world and to invest in that. So it just shows you the sense of value, education, and family that she's rooted in.
I want to put this up because we were talking about how America is all different things, and Charles does not want to know what different things he is. So
I'm just going to assume everything and be done with it. Like
this is Senator Raphael Warnock speaking. I believe it was on CNN last night. Watch.
That's right. And look, as disappointing as it is to hear this, if it's anything, it's certainly not surprising. This is who Donald Trump is. And he reminds us time and time again, the only thing he knows is the politics of division and hatred. This is what we're confronted with again. And he doesn't even recognize the sad irony of his remark. In a real sense, Kamala Harris's story is an iteration of the American story. The diversity that is among us and often within us. And that is the American story, out of many one, e pluribus unum. And she carries that literally in her veins. And in that sense, he doesn't know who we are. And if you don't know us, you can't represent us. You certainly can't lead us.
Charles, e pluribus unum, out of many one. I know you don't want to know, but I'm going to let Tara take this. Tara, I know you have to leave early.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it.
Does that resonate? Do you think that resonates to the public? I mean, it's very pastoral.
It is. I mean, it's the
message. Does that break through the way Trump's whole thing that she's not black or whatever break through?
Listen, I think with the right surrogates, that absolutely does. It opens up the conversation again for us to re-examine who we want to be as a country. When he wants to take us back to a time where we were divided and lesser than if you weren't a white Christian male. So I don't think most Americans feel that way. Most Americans are not looking backward to what they want this country to be. They want the country to be that more perfect union. We are trying to attain that. That is a forward-thinking approach. And Kamala Harris embodies that. She does. And so this gives an opportunity to tell that story in a way that isn't intimidating. Donald Trump is trying to otherize her because he knows that being an other is something that is appealing to his base. They don't like that. The others are bad. We don't want, we have to make America great again when the others weren't in power. Right. Like what? So I always say that Donald Trump hates what makes America great. Diversity makes America great. That is one of the many things that makes this country great. And Donald Trump and MAGA, they can't stand that because that means that they're losing power. So they don't get to define what makes America great. And I think that this opens that up if they're good with their massaging the messaging and how they do it. This could be a huge opportunity. It can be inspirational. It's absolutely what we should aspire to be. And you and more families are diverse.
Tara Setmayer has a long last name, and it's Tara Setmayer joined the fight at Seneca Project US.
Well,
so
yes.
make sure you join the fight at Seneca Project US. Click off. Bye, Tara. You're out of here.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Okay, thank you. So you guys, I want to exhaust this particular subject and then move on to something I think that is much more constructive and things that we could be speaking about. Okay, and that is. This is the last thing. This is the Transportation Secretary, Pete Buttigieg, talking about saying this is a new Trump normal. This is what's to be expected. Watch this.
And the more she pulls ahead, the more you're going to see, I think, Trump revert to the only thing he knows how to do when he's trying to get attention, which is to get more and more outrageous. Remember, for that brief period when it looked like maybe he might have been winning earlier this year, he actually began to show some glimmers of something that might be described as discipline. That collapsed the moment that Kamala Harris became the presumptive nominee, and now we're seeing that. We're seeing it when he has an even mildly skeptical or challenging interview, which, as we can tell from today's event, he was not able to handle without just being even more insulting and strange than usual. But even
Charles, I think you guys are having a mind meld here, right? You and the Transportation Secretary.
Yes, and I think resurrection of the trueness of him is the right way to frame it, because this has always been Trump's frame of reference and form of racism, thinking that Black people were getting some sort of advantage in America that was denied to white people. In 1989, he said on TV in a special about race that is his dream world. If he could start over, he would start over as an educated Black, because he believed that they had the advantages that were not accrued to white people, which is extraordinary, all the things we already know. But that's how he sees it. He believes that by identifying as a Black woman, she is getting some advantage in America, because as an educated Black person, you get given things. He believes when you played that clip of him talking about DEI, whether or not he would condemn his supporters for saying that she was a DEI candidate, he never said no, because that is actually how he thinks, dating all the way back to 35 years ago, him articulating it as such.
Well, I like to see what Black people are being given, but anyways, okay. I want to pivot the conversation now. Thank you, Charles, for that. Thank you, Sanjyot, for that. Now let's talk about this. The possible VP pick for Vice President Kamala Harris. Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro met with Harris's vetting team on Wednesday. That's according to NBC News. What's more is that Shapiro canceled fundraisers in the Hamptons this weekend, originally scheduled to raise money for his PAC. His press secretary, Manuel Bonder, confirmed, quote, his schedule has changed and he is no longer traveling to the Hamptons this weekend, Bonder said. So what do you think that means, Sanjyot? Anything to you?
I think we have a vice presidential pick in the making here, and I think and I think there's also been some discussion about the fact that there's some limitations about if he can raise money as a governor before he becomes a vice president. So I think there's some technical issues, which is why the delayed debut is probably next week, and I think it's a terrific choice. I think he is a very pragmatic, very popular governor, and he, I tend to like governors as leaders in terms of the presidential. So they have a lot of experience building bridges across all sorts of divides, whether it's partisan divides, ethnic divides, racial, cultural. They have to make sure their states work well, and I think that he has done a really good job doing it. And I believe he has a popularity of over 60%. So I think he reflects what America hopes for and what the vice president's campaign has really been talking about, which is really, face forward, everybody wants to feel hopeful. You know, that's a very common American value. We want to feel hopeful for the future. Everybody wants to participate in their version of the American dream, and to suggest that it's either not accessible or that you don't deserve it or it's somehow left in the past is just not inspiring. So inspiring. So I think that he will add a lot to this ticket.
You think we have a pick here, Charles?
I mean, I haven't checked Mark Kelly's schedule, so I don't want to say yet because I don't know. But
and Bashir's schedule.
I haven't checked all the schedules, so I don't want to say. But either one of those people is not a phony and is not a deadly bore like JD Vance. First of all, he's just absolutely boring. Like I tried to watch him at his rallies. There's nothing. There's no sizzle. There's no appeal. I don't understand what they were thinking when they selected him. I think the billionaires got in Trump's ear and said that this would be good, and they told him he was already winning, so that this would just secure the legacy. He said, okay, fine, whatever, you're gonna give me a lot of money, I'll do it. But it's a horrible, horrible, horrible pick. And everything that comes out about him just exposes him as a phony. And that's the worst thing, because not everybody understands every policy issue. People do understand when people are being fake. People do understand that these text messages say you believe this about the man, and now you're all up under him and hugging him at the convention. That just reads to any average, everyday American who's not plugged into politics, who doesn't follow everything, doesn't watch television news or the Don Lemon show every day. They can understand this guy is just not my type of guy. All three of the vice presidential possibilities you just named are just adults, but also a new generation of adult. You know, none of them are Trump's age. So Trump and the Republicans use this age thing forever and ever and ever. And now the only person it applies to is him. So now they're trapped in it. You gave us a year of he's too old, he's too old, he's too old. And now the only old person in this entire race is you.
It's Donald Trump.
In the trap that you set. So it's really an extraordinary turn of events.
Charles, don't forget to check Tim Walz's schedule as well. I mean, because, you know, we never know with his schedule.
I don't know how these things happen, so I'm not going to guess. I never speculate. I don't know who she's going to pick, but it looks like the choices are good ones.
All right, let's listen to Shapiro here.
Check it. We'll have to come back on Monday and see which one wins, right?
Okay, I want you guys to listen to Shapiro. He's with Tim Miller of The Bulwark. Listen.
Democracy thing, though, Biden gave a big speech here about that on the January 6th anniversary. And, you know, there's some people out there that I sit next to in these pundit chairs like, he shouldn't talk about that. These people only care about kitchen table. I don't, where do you stand on that?
I respectfully disagree with you. I think the individual.
I don't agree with that. You respectfully disagree with my imaginary pundit.
No, but you mentioned that the guy in Luzerne County doesn't care about democracy. I actually think people care about freedom and democracy a lot. They may not articulate it that way, but they want their rights protected. Women want the right to be able to make decisions over their own body. Folks want to be able to worship where they want. They want the freedom to walk down the street and not be shot. They want the freedom to be able to make decisions about what books their kids are going to read, not government telling them what books to read. And so I think freedom and democracy are on people's minds. And I think it is possible to walk and chew gum at the same time. We proved that in my governor's race. We talked about what you'd refer to as the kitchen table issues, right? Cutting costs, economic development,
we get it.
Safety,
he's very well spoken. He's very charismatic. He's young. He's smart. He's handsome. What's not to like, Charles? And then there's the Jewish thing.
No, the Jewish thing is actually.
But I'm talking about in terms of Michigan and Gaza.
I don't care about it. I don't care about it. What I want to make this point. If it is him, just cold political calculus, Democrats will have solved two problems that were really going to be a problem for their coalition. They had Black people looking like they were going to peel away, and many of them sit out, and some of them vote for Trump. And that has been, to some degree, solved by Kamala Harris. When you look at the enthusiasm in the Black community around her candidacy, it is off the charts. They may not pull back all the Black men, but it'll be made up for in a number of Black women. There were also Jewish Americans who were, nervous about how Jewish Americans in this country have been treated after the start of the war in Gaza. They were really worried about a rise in anti-Semitism. And they were worried that too many of the people that they thought were part of that were also on the left and in the Democratic Party. And it was a real issue. If you read the stories about this, it was causing some agita. Like, where's our home if the people who are agitating in this way are in the Democratic Party? This would go a long way towards calming that down and making people feel assured that, not only are we part of a history-making moment, but also that the Democratic Party is accepting of us and is not turning on us, but in fact is embracing us. I think that just in cold political calculus, this Black and Asian woman, and if you had a vice president who was a Jewish American, it might solve or put some caulk into the cracks that were forming in a Democratic coalition.
Sanjyot, I'll give you the last word on this subject.
Yeah, and I would add that it's certainly going to help in making sure that Pennsylvania, a very critical swing state, goes in the way of the Democrats. So I think that's an important thing. I just want to also highlight in the piece that you just showed, I'm really very intrigued and very content and pleased to see that both Vice President Harris, Josh Shapiro, and many others are really talking about freedom, which is a very core, basic American value. It is a quintessential American value in ways that resonate with people, right? The freedom to be able to choose, what decisions about your body, the freedom to choose your religion, the freedom to choose your partner, the freedom to be able to live safely. These are things that resonate with people. And I think the way that we've changed the communication is a sharp contrast to what President Biden may have been saying, perhaps even just 6 months ago. So I think we really have to note that we're connecting with people a lot better based on their values.
Well, I appreciate both of you joining. I'm going to cut out a little bit early and let you guys get your weekend early.
It's a long show. I was like, when is this show going to be?
Charles, don't start no shit on this show, okay? Because the next time I see you, we're going to have a fight, a real fight in person, not a play fight, not a play cousin fight. We're going to have a real fight. So, Charles, come back and see us up here in the north, okay?
All right.
I know you're doing your reverse migration thing, but we love having you up here. We'd love to see you. Thank you, Sanjyot. Sanjyot. We hope to see you guys soon. And thank you, everyone, for watching. We really appreciate it. Make sure you hit the thumbs up before you go. And I'm going to talk to you guys tomorrow because I got to get out of here. I got a bunch of things I need to do. But also, pre-order my book. Both of you, YouTube, and everybody in the chat, everybody watching, make sure you pre-order the book. The link is in the chat. Okay, I'll see you guys later. Bye. Have a good evening. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.